12. Jen?
Okay, so back in September, this committee had recommended to go forward and bring to the McGrath Consulting organization the compensation and evaluations for the communications director and the assistant communications media specialist position. So we did submit those to McGrath. The results came back on October 9th. Based on that, in your packet, you'll see a kind of a summary of the recommendations provided by McGrath. In summary, in looking at the communications director position and the responsibilities of that role, including the oversight of the assistant media specialist, the recommendation by McGrath was to bring that in pay grade 131. You can see that pay grade 131 is outlined in the scale so that you have a chance to look at that. Initially, we had looked at the position costing about $60,000 a year. That was the estimate that the mayor had received when he looked at other communities. When we got our compensation evaluation back, the minimum salary is $62,670. It would be exempt, which means not overtime eligible. And actually, if you look in your packet, you're going to see the costing assessment for that with the benefits. Benefits would be based on family plans, kind of worst case scenario in that case, and the total cost would be $90,925 per year, weighted with full benefits. So that is the first position that we would look at, and we would like to place that on the scale for the current year. Now, again, these are 2018 wages because we've not gotten to our 2019 wages yet. However, we'd like to put that on the scale in the event that you choose to approve the communications director position, which will come in a separate meeting. This is really only to establish the pay grade. The second position that we have is then the communication media specialist. The title changed slightly from the initial review from assistant communication media specialist to communications media specialist. This position is more the technical role that would work along with the communications director, and this position was slotted for pay grade 121. That pay scale is again included in your memo, so you can take a look at it. If we looked at the weighted average for this position, again, we had estimated it at about $30,000 a year. The salary came back at $36,233 per year. And then again, if you looked at the weighted average, the total estimated cost with full benefits at a family plan would be approximately $60,000 a year. And for that position, again, I'd be looking for your approval to place it on the scale in the event that the position is approved going forward. I'm happy to take any questions that you have.
Any questions? Nick?
Jen, I had contacted you and requested some additional information. What would happen if we, for each of these positions, if we put them in at a lower pay grade, say one pay grade lower, would that get us closer to what had been estimated by the committee as the cost of these?
Yeah, the communication director was pretty close within a $2,000 range. If you did move that down slightly, it would. Keep in mind that the $36,000 and the $62,000 are based on step one of that scale. So if you would come in and you would have to negotiate having somebody in a little bit higher, you know, the way our policy allows right now is for us to negotiate up to step 5. So yes, if you would bring that in at a lower pay grade, that would be possible.
Because these are new positions, so we really haven't fleshed out what the duties are going to be yet. So McGrath is sort of going based on, I assume, what other agencies, other entities have.
They could. If you would choose to go that route, one option that we could do would be to go back and reevaluate the job in another, 6-9 months, maybe a year, once that position is filled, so we have a more accurate assessment of what the day-to-day work is, and then reevaluate the job at that point.
Rebecca?
So I was under the understanding that they looked at our job descriptions that we sent them.
They did.
So the anticipated job that we are asking, not comparable to other cities.
Correct.
And then did you estimate, because there is negotiations that can occur, did you estimate what each of these positions would cost us, say, if they did come in at step 5? They were both very experienced.
So if you were, every year that you would like to give them a step on the scale between step 1 and step 5, there's a 2.5% adjustment. So if you would look at step 3, it'd be a total 5% adjustment. If you'd look at step 5, you'd be looking at 10% higher than what we're looking at now.
to 10% higher, you said, for both positions.
Right.
So I'm just looking here then at the numbers. I'm sorry, there's so many notes here. So at 10%, what is that? I'm losing the original number here.
Step 5 for the communication media specialist would be $19.24 per hour, and step 5 for the communication director would be $33.25.
And annually, that would be what for each?
I would ballpark it, I would say multiply that by 2080 hours, so about $6,000 to $7,000 more.
So you're saying 68 to 69 for the first position, and where's the second position? Oh, 42 to 43 for the second position.
No, and keep in mind, it would not be common with this new pay scale to bring somebody in at a high step. I mean, I would see maybe a step 2 or 3 based on the fact that as we put new people into the scale, because of the fact that we had frozen people in the past, I don't have many people that are well up in those ranges. So we always do a couple of things. We'd be looking at the skill set of the person coming in to evaluate that, but then we also do an equity check with others that are in a similar pay grade or type of role to make sure that we don't have any equity issues.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the two things that stand out to me that I think, I'm kind of talking to the people at home here. The first is the total cost of this at these estimated or the pay study results. It's $150,000 between these two positions, right? That's at the lowest step as being proven. $150,000. We were also told early on in the process that we would not have a department, yet this item says request to approve placement of the communications department staff. It's disappointing.
Let me take the second one first. Yeah, thank you. I think, we talked about this being under the city administrator. The communications director will report to me. The question that's come up is whether or not, would this two-person group, if you will, function be a department or would they be a part of administration? And I think our thought was that perhaps maybe it should be a separate department. I mean, it could be considered to be under administration. Regardless, the position, given the job description, the job description says you would do these things, and we could call the person communications intern, and it would still, it doesn't matter. It's based upon what they do, so that's what dictates the pay. I hear you loud and clear. My thought was initially it wouldn't be a separate department either, but it doesn't really fit necessarily directly with what the other members of our department do, I don't think.
Yeah, and just to elaborate on that, Steve and I had a basic discussion, knowing that this position is funded by cable franchise fees. The thought that we had was, in the event that we needed, we want to track these dollars separately, and so to keep everything in one area, Steve and I had talked about, would it be better to put a department category around it just to be able to make sure we're budgeting appropriately?
Yeah, thanks, Jen. And then going back to your first question about the $150,000, the budget that is going to be submitted to the council shows a number not too far from that for the two positions plus benefits. I think that the thought was like $60,000 for the top position and $32,000 or something, 30-some thousand for the other. So it is a little bit more than that. It is. Not grossly so, but a little bit more than initially expected. I think that bumps it up a few thousand. I think initially it was supposed to be like 140 or 141 for the two combined. Maybe it'll be closer to 150, depending upon the pay grade assigned. I think Jen makes a really good point. We rarely put somebody at step 4 or step 5 when they start. But it wouldn't be surprising if someone had some good experience that we would look at a step 2 or step 3 if we needed to do that in order to land that person in the position.
And again, if I could, Mr. Chair, just thank you, Mr. Barg and Mrs. Rakey for the explanation. I'll just say it one last time. We were told it would not be a department. Thank you.
Rebecca?
So I just want to talk about the possibility of the cable access committee or the cable access fees being cut to all communities. What is your solution if that's indeed the case, if they are cut by 20 to 30%? Where would the makeup be to accommodate both these employees' wages and benefits, plus the cost of running the department, buying the equipment, opening a studio? Where is the makeup?
That's a really good question. Obviously, you're referring to the email that went out recently that came from an attorney in the area that said that it appears as though there may be potential cut to franchise fees of 20 to possibly 30%, and cities and villages should get ready for that. You know, I don't have the answer to that question. That is one of the concerns with bringing people on as staff who you have to deal with as opposed to a contractor situation. I'm hopeful that won't happen. I'm hoping that there'll be a strong lobby against it, but that is something that we will need to keep an eye on for the next couple of weeks before we actually finish out this position of this process and post.
Any further questions? Well, I
I have
think,
one more question.
go ahead, Nick.
Steve, if the cable fees are reduced by the amount that was suggested, will that affect the current situation with the current,
Well, you know, if you think about it, we only have a contract with the current provider for 3 months in 2019. So, I mean, we could certainly fulfill that contract, and then the question would be what happens after April 1st, because we would have spent a greater share of our annual revenue from cable franchise fees than 3 months would suggest. So, I mean, we'd have to look at, if we brought somebody else on, would it have to be a reduced service? And if so, how would that be set up? This is a very good question. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm hopeful that doesn't happen, but a 20, 25, 30% cut in franchise fees is going to be devastating, whether we have a contract provider or an on-staff provider. The difference, of course, being that, you know, once you hire staff, you don't generally look for ways to lay them off, but we need to monitor this before we bring somebody on board.
Any further questions? If not, what I like to see in my own mind, I understand the concern about the 30, 40% cut, whatever it is, but I think we're just purely in the planning stages at this point. And I think we should continue to plan. But if we plan and something becomes real, I think we need to have some contingencies that will allow us the flexibility to make the adjustments.
Yeah, I agree with you. I got to tell you, though, this is not the first time in my many years in local government that there's been a threat to reduce franchise fees. There's been movements afoot by various telecommunications agencies and others who've tried to change this whole picture. They don't like the way this happens, and neither do cable companies themselves. I'm not saying it won't happen, though. I'm just saying that this isn't the first attempt to change this, and we're hopeful that won't come to pass, but we need to prepare.
Okay, Gordy?
If we were to approve this tonight and it would go to council and they would override us, then what would happen?
Well, I think at that point, if the council deems it's not important enough to approve to continue planning, it would fail. Simple. But I think we ought to give this thing a chance. We're in the early stages of this. And there's always a way back, as you said, Steve. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. If at any point along the process, Jen's put this forth tonight for approval of placement of these positions, but ultimately you'll have to formally authorize these positions. It's all part of a step process to walk through to a logical conclusion. But if at any point the council says no, that they're uncomfortable bringing this in-house or, taking it on in that way for any reason, we'll have to deal with it. I mean, and the options then will be, well, do we continue with a provider? Do we put out a new RFP? Do we, what do we do? These are all things that are possible, but the road we've been walking on with the council for, 2 or 3 months now, it seems like, has been making these staff positions and bringing the service in-house. So we're going to continue walking down that road until council says otherwise.
And my suggestion is that from a committee standpoint, I don't want to see this thing die in committee, okay? I like to see this thing go on to the council and discuss it. I mean, they can discuss it anyway, either way. But I think we ought to at least, pass it on to the council to have them discuss it totally. So, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the placement as recommended.
Okay, do I have a second? Do I have a second?
Not for me.
From anybody? A second by Gordy. Thank you.
I guess I'm curious at this point. the uncertainty of it all, we're saying in effect that the council can step in at some point and override this anyway.
We're a long
So-
way
so-
from the finish.
So we're saying in effect, this vote isn't that important tonight from a standpoint of the ultimate thing that's going to happen.
Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's not important. I think that determining placement of these two positions on our pay scale is a pretty important step. And then the council will be asked next week to ratify that decision. And then we'll come back at you after that, very soon after that, probably looking to see if you're ready to move forward with authorizing the positions. Right now, you're trying to determine if you want to accept what McGrath has suggested these individuals should be paid at if we do this. Every one of these steps is important. You know, I'm not trying to minimize any one step, but we're giving you opportunities to make sure it's done thoughtfully. We've talked about every piece of the puzzle so far, and tonight it includes where they should be paid if we do this. So is it important? Yeah. Is it the last time you'll see this? No, but I don't want you to minimize it too much in your mind.
Rebecca.
My issue with this is that, you know, it was very, very, when it was presented to us, there was a million well thought out numbers put up on the screen, and we were pretty much guaranteed that this was, you know, they knew this. They're selling this whole department, the idea of a department, based on all the work they did. And the very first step, they're already 10,000 under. So I am going to continue, you know, to oppose this because my opposition to this has always been that it would come in over our projected budget. Step number one, 10 grand over our projected budget. This is step number one, and we are already over. So that is just exactly where I thought we would be, and so I'm going to continue to voice my opposition to
Okay,
this.
we have a motion on the floor and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed?
No.
No.
An aye. Motion carries by 3-2 margin. Thank you.